What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your man, Tytan here with Siwon Kim from MXC. He is in charge of biz dev at MXCFoundation. So we're going to talk about all kinds of different topics today. One of the articles that he actually wrote for us was about kind of how business translates from places like Germany, where he's lived for many years of his life, the States, and then also Asia. But we're also going to dive into topics like what's called LPWAN, which is actually a better substitute for 5G, which is not being implemented. And then we're also going to talk about the situation for coronavirus before everything started going crazy and Siwon's experience with that. So Siwon, if you will, give us a little introduction into who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Siwon Kim. I'm a biz dev manager. I'm here at MXCFoundation based in Berlin, Germany. I'm based there right now. But also I'm heading our business operations in Seoul, South Korea. We actually have an office there also. So, I travel back and forth, which is also what motivated me to write that article. I mean, a little background about who I am, actually. Yeah, so a lot of people don't know this about me, but I actually studied politics. While studying politics, I actually worked in public sector mainly. So I worked for a bit in the U.S. State Department, actually, in their embassy in Qatar. And then I also worked in conjunction with the president's office in South Korea. Yeah, that's just a little interesting background about me. So, it's always kind of a motivator for me to, look at the different cultures and the kind of social norm and how it interacts with business.
How did you, sorry for interrupting, but how did you get into that? Where did that start from?
Yeah, so I actually was studying Middle Eastern politics. And then so I had a chance to study, I actually studied in Boston University and I transitioned to Georgetown University in their campus in Qatar. So, that was a pretty cool experience for me to, study the region, but also kind of live in it. And, I think it was a great time for me because, you get exposed to a lot of the different perspectives compared to the mainstream perspectives in US or in Europe, let's say. So yeah, I mean, then I think it all just kind of started quite weirdly because I never thought I would work in an embassy, but they're coming to the campus to host some job interview because they wanted to hire some fresh, young-minded students, let's say. And
Right.
I actually was the first one to make it to the room.
Oh, nice.
and then they're still like moving around the couch, and I see this like woman from the embassy, trying to carry this couch, and I was like, oh, let me help. And then we kind of just had the conversation. And after the interview, she was like, yeah, all right, like you can come on, like.
What? That's awesome. That's awesome. What a break. You just the first one there and just like, just being helpful.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I look back and that it's just different weaving path, and even how I got to work in blockchain and in cryptocurrency. It's was a whole long way in it because after that I worked in marketing, I worked in consulting for a bit also, and then I kind of just got picked up by a VC and their office, like they're a Chinese VC, but they were establishing an office in Berlin. And so I started working for them, and MXC was actually funded by the VC. And then so Aaron, who's the co-founder of MXCFoundation, he saw me and then he was like, hey, do you want to join? I thought like, at first I was like, okay, like, I'm being sold over to a different project because maybe the VC didn't like me or something.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and then like later I realized that the CEO of the VC's office in Germany was away in China for like 3 weeks, and then it just happened within that 3 weeks, and she came back and she was like, wait, like you guys like stole him from me, but we're still on good terms, like we go out together, get drinks and so on. So yeah, it's all good.
Wow, what a transition from politics all the way to blockchain. It's funny because, blockchain actually has, a lot of governance to do with it. If governance is not, I guess, properly distributed, I guess that's how you could say it, then obviously it becomes very centralized and it kind of defeats the purpose of a blockchain, or at least the purpose of, crypto anarchist version of a blockchain. What do you think what kind of information or what do you think you've picked up along the way that might help you understand blockchain a little bit better as far as governance goes, just being in politics?
Sure. So I think I have to admit I have a little bias because I think everyone who studies politics are a bit skeptical of politics.
Yes.
There's this like running joke that you study politics, you go into politics thinking you're gonna change the world, but either the world changes you or you just can't handle it anymore.
Pretty much.
So I have to admit I'm very skeptical towards any government.
Hey man, we're the same.
Exactly. But I mean, when I hear different governments, talking about their regulations and governance, and whether what's favorable and what's not, and what's allowed and what's discouraged, let's say, because you still can't make something super illegal. Sometimes I just look at it and I can see that so much of that is a little bit of bullshit, let's just say it. There was a time when I actually went to Korea Blockchain Week, also you did.
Yes.
And then I attended this event that was hosted at the South Korean parliamentary building. And there was the deputy mayor of Busan City who came and then said, oh, they want to use their own like local cryptocurrency to, facilitate, transactions in local markets, maybe not big supermarkets, but at least like local markets, small, medium companies and so on. It sounds favorable. And I think that's what a lot of news media kind of pick up on. They say, oh, like this big city in South Korea just talked about local, crypto coin.
I remember reading about that. It was supposed to be a big thing. I think ICX was involved.
Yeah, I mean, like so many different companies and projects were involved. But I mean, then I actually asked the deputy mayor a question and saying, would this currency be able to be used, outside of the city? Let's say like Busan is one of the most southern cities in South Korea. Let's say that I have this token in my wallet and I travel to Seoul. Can I use it there? And he said no. And then I said, then what's the entire point?
Yeah.
I think it's just absolutely ridiculous. And even right now, the South Korean government is saying like, to help all the citizens with this coronavirus, they're gonna give us like some money to like help us live. But you can either get this money in forms of voucher where you can go to like small street markets. You literally have to go outside and pay there, which is not encouraged during this pandemic.
Right. Yeah. What?
And they're saying, oh, but like we could also, I don't know, like use digital currency, but they have no idea how to use it. It's just one of these buzzwords, they want to look trendy a bit. And I think it's still being used a lot for image making purposes. And, we are not going to see much of a change for, let's say, next 5 to 10 years, because I think a lot of the people in parliament either just don't have the capacity to understand the technology, so therefore they cannot even read regulations with proper understanding. Or the second thing is they're just against it. So, we need to kind of wait for, us millennials and Zoomers to start going into
looking at like 10, 15, 20 years maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So it's gonna take a while, but that's just my take on this whole governance thing.
Well, now that we just discussed that, it sounds like you're on the same wavelength as me and probably most of people now about how we feel about cryptocurrency. I feel like most people have come to the conclusion that, obviously, a lot of these cryptocurrencies were a bunch of scams. That's a given. All right, we know that now. Initially, it was questionable, but now, and obviously back in 2017, 2018, 2019, the buzzword blockchain, cryptocurrency, decentralized, these are all big buzzwords for the industry, and it was why a lot of the money was being pushed around because it was such a big thing. I'm assuming you have kind of come to the same conclusion as myself in understanding that there are very, very few actual use cases in work right now for cryptocurrency and blockchain that are actually useful, and really none of them have anything to do with actual cryptocurrency besides Brave, with a basic attention token. But really it comes down to like companies like VeChain. They actually have a solid use case, but a lot of these companies don't. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, first of all, you mentioned VeChain. They're also one of our investors, so like we're looking we're looking good right now.
Nice, man. Didn't know that.
VeChain, if you're looking, extra funding is always welcome.
Oh yeah, send a couple mil our way. We're needing it,
Yeah, I mean, let's just talk about that. I mean, like, I'm gonna just say, a lot of different projects in crypto right now, even with working, as they say, solutions are just outrageous. Some are outrageous scams. Most are just completely useless solution that nobody really looked for, because I think the whole problem is a lot of these projects and their founders began in 2016, 2017. Then they start to realize they're like, oh, okay, you know what, like doing something with crypto makes a lot of money. So,
Yeah.
all right, what can we do to apply this blockchain in something? So that's why you have a lot of different people saying, oh, like back then Bitcoin was like freaking huge. So they're like, what's high value investment or real estate? That's why you have a lot of real estate and blockchain kind of combined thing. Same for like high value materials. And there's this whole, like, remember the whole time when all these like companies were saying like, oh, we produce like steel or precious metal and then we do like crypto, like thinking about that just makes me want to fucking throw up. I think the whole problem is that a lot of people who founded these projects don't necessarily have the right knowledge in the industry in which for they're providing the solution. So for example, I mean, like MXC is an IoT token. So even for us, like if we said, okay, like we had no idea about IoT, but let's say we want to have a blockchain solution and hey, IoT looks good, so let's include that, then we would be at a very different place right now. But for us, actually, actually, other than one, because he was working in the business side. But other than one, like all the co-founders worked previously in IoT, and there are engineers, working with different connectivity issues for different devices. Then they realized there is a problem. Then they started to look into blockchain and they're adopting that. So it's a lot of people say, oh, it doesn't really matter. Where is the starting point? It doesn't really matter. But I think it really matters, And I think that's also why there's so many projects who say, oh, we're the next Bitcoin. Like what the fuck does that even mean? Like,
yeah, what does that mean? Okay, you're the next Bitcoin. So it's going to take you 11 years to finally reach your value. And what gives you value? I mean, I understand Bitcoin, and I think Bitcoin, obviously, its biggest value proposition started out as the fact that it was decentralized. Obviously, like the founder disappeared, and people somewhat believe they could use it because it was one of a kind, right? But you can't replicate the same system that Bitcoin created and then just say, oh, it's going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like Hex. Dude, the whole Hex thing, oh my. I was going back and forth a couple months ago about Hex with some of the FOMO Hunt team members. And I know it's a scam. I know it was a scam. It still is. Because your value proposition can't be entirely reliant on, oh, the algorithm says it's gonna go up in value, so buy it.
Exactly.
That's not how it works.
It's just absolutely just ridiculous, and it's the same for all these, like, oh, basically, like if you see a project saying like, oh, we're the next Bitcoin, like you can just hard pass that. And I think it's also the same for a lot of these different, there's so many projects who say, oh, we're the digital cash, but there are already successful and established blockchain projects who do just that. So why do you need to add to this whole chaos of 3,000 plus projects, and out of those, like more than half say, oh, we're the digital cash? Like you probably have more digital cash than the types of currency in the world already.
Well, I mean, like I was just talking with Charles Reed last week on the last podcast episode about stablecoins. Are you really going to knock off a stablecoin, pushed by a massive company like, Coinbase, for example, USDC or USDT, Bitfinex? I mean, come on, you're not going to be able to compete with these giants, first of all. And it's all about like the usage. A stablecoin is just a stablecoin. You can't become a digital cash and that be your only like value proposition. That's not how it works.
Exactly. So I mean, that's why my future prediction is that in a couple of years, you'll see so many projects just die off. And, especially in this crisis where a lot of companies are struggling financially. And I think for people who are watching also, you also have to look at how are companies reacting during this time. Are they staying quiet or are they making moves? Because if they're staying quiet, that means that they don't have the funding to back up their operations during this crisis. So I don't know, maybe take your money and go somewhere else. Like companies that are actually doing something, because that means that they're funded very well throughout any crisis.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, and when this crisis is over, these are the projects that are going to give you some return on investment.
Right. And I mean, so yeah, all you have to do is just like see who's actively marketing right now. So like Celsius, BlockFi, companies like Nexos, companies like that, obviously, and then obviously you guys, companies like that are obviously going to be able to make it, because if they have somewhat of a marketing budget, obviously it means that they're well funded and they've got backups to ensure their survival. But if you don't hear a word from any of these companies that you invested in, there's a very strong likelihood that through 2018, 2019, and now this coronavirus black swan event, they're dead.
Yeah, for sure.
And let's talk about this thing that I've never heard of called LPWAN. Siwon was telling me about this earlier. I never even heard of it. But if you would just kind of explain, like, what is that? And
I mean, to understand LPWAN, you have to understand that almost all types of networks are, at the end of the day, they're radio frequencies. So LPWAN is a type of radio frequency that's reserved by the government for public usage, which means different companies cannot kind of, rent it and then charge licensing fee, which is essentially what they do with Wi-Fi, with 3G, 4G, 5G. You look at like Telecom, Verizon, I don't know, like Sprint Mobile, even.
Yeah,
That's
like anybody who offers up Wi-Fi, any ISP basically, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
when the money you pay is essentially a licensing fee, and that's because these companies can buy up the bandwidth, but that's not true for LPWAN because it's for public usage. So which means
Oh.
that it's free to use for everyone. So you don't have to go to a telecommunications company to set up your own LP1 connection. It's literally all around you because it's a radio frequency. And the whole reason of that a lot of companies don't know about LP1 is because these telecommunications giants say, oh, you know what, we can't make money on that. Let's hide this. Let's market 3G, 4G, LTE, 5G where they can make money. So that's why a lot of people haven't heard about this. And I mean, it's true. I mean, even when I go to these IoT events, a lot of people also don't know what LP1 is. And the benefits of LP1, first of all, it's that, well, it's free to use. And second is that it uses extremely low amount of electricity, which means that let's say that you plug in some kind of LP1 device and the amount of electricity it would use in a day is less than that of a light bulb. So essentially the operating cost in terms of electricity is zero. And the third part is that it, as the name suggests, like it's long range, like LPWAN, low powered wide area network, which is a type of LoRa, which is long range. And it can reach usually around 10 to 20 kilometers. What we have done in addition to that is that we added a layer protocol. So it allows you to have around the range of up to like 30 to 40 kilometers. You can, connect up to 60,000 devices into one type of gateway, which is a type of router. So let's say that the downside is that sure, it's low power, so you cannot send like videos or music, you can't send WhatsApp over it, but it's powerful enough for devices to communicate with each other, right? So LP1 cannot be, let's say, a competitor to 5G when it comes to like mobile or your laptop or hotspots and so on.
Right, because 5G is it's a massively amplified frequency.
Exactly.
Yeah. With this, could you amplify LP1? Is that possible?
It's possible with the amount of connections. And also it's possible with different technology, let's say. I mean, right now we're testing some different things such as sending images over LPWAN, which was not done before. We're thinking about processing video data, so for surveillance and using LPWAN for that, which is also being tested quite successfully, and then we're going to start rolling that out in China pretty soon. So there are some developments being done, of course, but also a lot of people don't know about it. It's just simply this whole
Just hidden. I mean, I didn't know about it.
It's also that there is less number of experts also. But yeah, but when it comes to different smart cities or smart factories where these devices aren't going to send WhatsApp messages to each other and then say like, hey, like want to Netflix and chill later, like they're not going to do that. They're simply communicating in code. And for that, LP1 is more than enough, which is what we have been pitching to different cities. And I think that's also one of the reasons why we have, deals in Shanghai, in New York, in Seoul, and, in Australia, like different countries around the world.
So LP1, that is something that you guys at MXC are tapping into. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we are combining blockchain element to LP1. And a lot of people say, okay, but LP1 is free to use, so why do you need to use tokens? But the downside of LP1 is that there is no roaming, right? So let's say that you are traveling from, I don't know, like from New York to LA, and your LP1 connection is not going to reach that far. So you need to have roaming of different LP1 networks along the way, which was very difficult to do before. What we have done and what we are doing currently is that we are automating the process so that you don't have to worry about it, that these LP1 networks basically communicate with each other. And then so you would use the MXC tokens as kind of a roaming fee. And even that would be essentially much smaller than
what you would pay with any, it's like way cheaper than what you would pay with 4G, 5G, or any internet. I mean, we pay, I think, for 6 megabits per second. We're in a rural area, so we pay 6 megabits per second to our ISP, Windstream. If you know Windstream, you know it sucks. So we pay like $70, $70 for 6 megabits. I mean, that's just Wi-Fi, obviously, but like 4G, 5G, anything like that, obviously you're going to pay at least $60 to $70 for most people.
So I think this solution could be useful for cities and governments and businesses, but also for what what we're offering to normal people like us who don't have smart factories running in the background.
Right. It's all good. Coronavirus.
I don't have coronavirus. I fucking knew this
uh,
was coming up. Uh, yeah.
yeah.
So what we offer to people like us is that because it's a public frequency, you can set up your own LPWAN gateway, which is a type of router, and provide network around you in like radius of 30 kilometers. And then for each device that uses your network, you can actually get tokens back. So it's a whole reverse method. We are giving the power to distribute this network to the people. So it's also has some chances to become like a passive income, and you essentially the operation cost is just zero, and you're actually making sure that different devices passing through have stable connection. They can continue to be connected to their cloud or other devices or whatever it may be.
It makes a lot of sense, to be honest. You're saying that you're adding another layer of encryption to this, correct? So it's obviously more secure, or at least secure enough for governments to use it, like Shanghai.
Yeah.
We just discussed earlier that you travel probably way more than I have, but you've lived in the US, you've lived in Germany, and that's where you're at right now. And then you've also lived in Korea. So I guess what are the business practices that probably pop out the most for any one of those types of people, Korean, German, or American? What's unique about each one?
I don't know about business practices per se, because I guess in business, you're always expected to be polite and on time and so on.
True.
By the way, there's this whole common myth that Germans are always on time. That may be true in like Bavaria, but other parts of Germany, that's not true, especially in Berlin. Like people are going to be late,
That's funny. How are they on island time?
Exactly. But like they're going to show up if you invite them for drinking and or clubbing, for sure.
Right. Koreans do too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but I mean, what I've actually noticed as a big difference is how willing or unwilling different companies are propositions that's maybe new to them. Or I mean, propositions being, let's say, for the sake of content, let's say the proposition is using blockchain technology. And since I work in biz dev, I work with different companies and partners to bring this solution to them. And what I've actually realized is both in US and in Asia, companies generally respond very positively to it. Of course, in US, it's slightly more difficult because of regulations, and I can see that American companies are a bit more fearful of different legal risks or regulational risks that could come into it. But in Asian market, people are kind of say, hey, you know what, like let's just try it and see how it goes. That's also why I think in the US, most of the time, the most important part of starting a business is first you sign an MOU and you reach an understanding. And and reaching an understanding is a very good term to use, but in the end, it's just about, do you understand each other's risks, and how can we cover this? Basically, how can we cover our asses if the government comes knocking down and then say like, hey, we're going to crack down on this. But in Asia, it's more about POC or proof of concept. They want to see, is this going to work? And is this going to bring profit for the company? And for Europe, to be honest, it's neither. It's kind of like, I mean, I think maybe a lot of girls who are watching this could also kind of understand that European, well, like I cannot generalize Europeans. Generally, German people, especially German guys, are actually pretty shy.
Really?
Yeah, so you would expect them to wear their like leather hosen and then with like a beer and be like, hey, like come here, you lassie, like let's go.
Right.
But usually that's not the case, because I think they're more aware of your personal space. It's also kind of reflected in business, is that they do not want something invading their public space all of a sudden. So you always kind of have to test the water and then get to know this person first. And then it's the whole like dating in 1800s, like it's
it's like courtship.
Exactly. And then these companies generally, when they're proposed with blockchain technology, they first say, oh, they have heard of it, but they may not want to use it right now because they just don't know about it, and they want to know about it, and it's going to take ages and so on. So it's a very slow process. honestly. But I think European partnerships are usually also very profitable because once they commit to it, they push it quite hard. I think I also talked about briefly in my article, but I also didn't want to dive too much into this. A lot of people ask, okay, then let's say like for European companies and Asian companies, it's just different market, but why are they like that? And, for somebody who studied, like politics, like social sciences, you could actually see that a lot of Asian populations scores when it comes to being risk averse is very, very high. Socially, they do not want to make risks.
Yeah, they don't want to make mistakes. Yeah.
Exactly. But then you also see that a lot of, Koreans, Japanese, Chinese, especially the Far East Asian people, and also in Taiwan, they, when it comes to investing in crypto or just, like trading, they go pretty hard. And even the community members in South Korean community, when they say like, oh, I went a bit, like just nothing. And then we're talking, if they say one, that means 1,000 US dollars.
That's funny.
Yeah, and then it actually kind of struck me a bit thinking, why are these risk averse people diving so much into crypto? Because that's the maximum risk that you can ever have.
I was going to say, yeah, crypto is pretty risky.
Exactly. So I actually looked into this a bit, and my theory, of course, I may not have the answer, but my theory is that a lot of these Asian countries had quite a rapid economic development, right? So, a lot of these companies after World War II, then there was IMF and even before that, like South in Korea, there was Korean War. And a lot of these countries were just not developed and were not very wealthy. When they changed their focus of economy from agriculture to technology, then they started to have massive development, which is why a lot of Asian companies are very tech savvy when it comes to understanding new tech. They don't have this kind of negative gut feeling when it comes to being proposed with new technology. But also for people, it means that they themselves or their parents have witnessed this fast economic growth, and which makes most people not bullish on the economy itself, but bullish on their spending habits. So that's why when you look at different countries with fast economic development, their domestic debt, not public debt, but private debt for citizens is quite high, because these people tend to spend a lot of money, especially on credit cards. So you kind of combine those factors, and then you have a lot of these people putting money, basically being bullish on not the country's economy, but on this new development of technology, because it worked for their country's economy. So why shouldn't it work for their bank account? I think that's why a lot of them tend to put money in. I mean, of course, there is some problems of income inequality. So a lot of people think that's the only way they can make a lot of money in their entire lifetime. So, I mean, you also combine that, and then you look at in comparison with Europe, right? So like European countries were pretty stable ever since. They're also pretty stable right now. Income inequality isn't that dark. So a lot of people, when it comes to investing in crypto, they just don't want to do it, because why should they? They just don't feel the need. And it's the kind of psychology, I guess, is also reflected in different companies outside of blockchain in Europe.
Now, when you say Europe, I'm assuming you mean like Germany, Spain, Italy, like countries like that. Obviously, like Eastern Europe is a little different.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So like obviously for Eastern Europe, for example, those countries might be even less likely to obviously purchase cryptocurrency, because it's obviously not as economically superior to some of the other countries surrounding it. So obviously they would probably just like avoid it altogether and say no to risk, period.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, it also Eastern European countries, the type of currency also has a pretty strong effect.
That's true.
You look at Russia with their ever so weakening rubles, and you actually have a lot of Russian citizens who invest quite actively. So I think it's also differences in
the fiat currency. Yes, what I would say.
When it also comes to companies, its value or the inflation value of the fiat currency is not entirely reflected on how they make their decisions. It just purely comes into what they have been through and what kind of social norms can you expect within the culture.
Makes sense. Yeah. Now, so we actually met in Korea. We messaged back and forth before actually meeting in Korea for the first time for Korea Blockchain Week in 2019. And I had never been to Korea before, but I noticed that, the average Korean male, first of all, was like super beefy. All right. I felt pretty, as an American, this doesn't happen often, but I felt pretty like small compared compared to a lot of these Korean dudes. And I also noticed that they're very pushy, like very aggressive, not only with with business, but also just casually. Is that true for you as well, or do you find that it's more shy, like Germany?
I mean, I got so used to living abroad. I mean, like when I was young, I grew up in Australia, so it surprises me almost every time I go to Korea, and then people are very like you said, quite aggressive. I wouldn't say in a hostile manner, but they kind of like to come at you,
They like to push your buttons.
Yeah, and then so
Yeah.
sometimes like it makes me quite uncomfortable, when I'm outside and I see people, especially when you go like late at night. I mean, like, we've been in Gangnam at late at night, and you see different people, like rough handling others, especially girls. It kind of kills me a bit inside, because I think people should be more gentle with each other. I quite like that. But also in business, I don't know what it is. I mean, sometimes I think it also has to do with age, because it's a very hierarchical society, and age comes quite heavily into that. So when I meet with different Korean companies, and obviously looking at me, they can see that I'm younger than them, and then they try to kind of test me by like pushing different buttons, and let's see what triggers him and so on.
And then they make you drink. Yeah.
And then if you can like handle the alcohol, then you got it. If you cannot, then like get on the
sorry,
plane.
no deal. Oh man.
I mean, but I think it comes in the end quite a power play, right?
Yeah.
In Europe, the power play is not that vivid. But in America, of course, the power play is quite there. But in Asia, when you combine that, oh, I'm older than you, and plus, like, I want to have the power, then at the very beginning of the meeting, they might try to, like, put themselves as a bit of a superior position. But that's just how culture goes. I also like to kind of, like, drag them down from there a bit. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's what biz dev is really about, like trying to establish the right footing with the other person so that you can have a fair partnership or deal, because you don't want to lose so much, but also you shouldn't be looking to take so much.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, biz dev is all about like psychology. You don't want to give up too much ground by being too friendly, but you also don't want to come off as a dick. So it's like the perfect medium, and you also got to figure out who you're dealing with as well.
Yeah.
So that you can, and you can gauge that within the first, initial words with somebody. You can figure out exactly how aggressive somebody is or how relaxed they are, and then figure out like what the rest of the conversation is going to be like, so that you can, apply that right amount of pressure. So yeah, but that's all psychology, and honestly, I love it. I just love, people and psychology and all that stuff. It's just, it's really cool. And I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, of course. And I think, after you do this for a while, you meet so many people, then it just kind of comes naturally, like I mean, like I still do like Google the person's name before I meet them. I mean, that's just, check them out on LinkedIn, see what they're into. Right? I mean, I just want to get the feel for the guy.
I got to do a little bit of stalking before.
Exactly. I mean, but I think like it's also, I mean, like there are some people who say, oh, then you're manipulating, and like, who are you really? What's your true self? But I think in the end, it just kind of comes naturally. Like you're not being fake. You're not being someone who you're not. You're just learning how to tone or tweak your language differently to suit the other person.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can still be yourself. You can still be like who you are. You just have to figure out like what makes them tick, so that you don't overstep your boundaries, because everybody has them. Everybody has different boundaries, obviously. So yeah, that's interesting. So Siwon, was actually, this whole coronavirus thing happened when you were, you said you were at your girlfriend's house in Slovakia. This whole thing went down. Like, so how did that experience go?
I was supposed to go there for my girlfriend's birthday, and like she's pretty sensitive about her birthday. A lot of guys who date Slavic girls would understand they also have a different day called name day, which is a day for their name. I mean, it's a lot of days to keep in mind, right? But she's very sensitive about her birthday.
Today is Thai Day.
Exactly. I mean, I guess like, I wouldn't say like sensitive, but like, like she wants to keep her birthday celebrative. I went there, I traveled there, and there is no direct flight from Berlin to Bratislava, where she lived. So I actually had to fly to Vienna and then get on the bus, and then go to Bratislava, which is from Vienna to Bratislava with bus, it's like 40-minute ride, so it's quite quick. So I got there, and I like the day I arrived, the Slovak government just kind of announced like, hey, like surprise everyone starting tomorrow, like, we're gonna start to shut down and we need to like do this whole thing. And then so like the next day at like 5:30 a.m. I'm up, like, because my girlfriend said like we need to go grocery shopping, like 6-7 a.m. we do groceries, and it's just a whole chaos. And I thought like, like it's gonna be fine still. And then they started to do home office for almost everyone, which I think is very good because you're keeping everyone safe. It was the day before I was supposed to leave, and I got an email from the bus company that was supposed to take me to Vienna so I can catch my flight. And the bus company said, hey, your bus is canceled because they're closing the border. And then I said, well, okay, that kind of sucks. Started to look for other bus company. Then I started to realize that it's actually a pretty big problem that the border is going to close. So you cannot go from Slovakia to Austria. Then I got an email from Austrian Airlines who was supposed to fly me from Vienna to Berlin saying, hey, your flight is canceled.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because they're like, because they're suspending all flights. I quickly like called them, and then I made the flight ticket like to the day before. And then I said, okay, like I can make it, call different companies to get me to Vienna. A lot of them wouldn't. So I actually had to like hire a taxi to take me to the border, from the border, walk across the border, and then get on a different taxi from the other side of the border, and then like get to Vienna. But I mean, I made it back, safely, thankfully. And, but the airport in Vienna was closed. All shops were closed. Wi-Fi was closed. Like, so there was no Wi-Fi in the airport, nowhere to get food or water or anything, no duty free. So I actually like took some videos of that and got picked up by some different news media to kind of show how serious the situation is in Europe. And yeah, like after that, like I pretty much got on the last flight from Vienna to Berlin, operated by Austrian Airlines, before that line was closed until who knows when. And then after that I got home, and like I actually like did this thing where I wrote down all the places that I went during my previous week, let's say, what kind of people I met. And I just stayed inside the whole time, but like, oh, I went to this supermarket in this area at this time. I took an Uber when I got in Berlin, and like I was on this flight and I got on this taxi. Then I have the entire list, and then for 2 weeks I was just measuring my temperature like daily, trying to see if I have any symptoms, so that when I do, I can kind of call in and also let them know, hey, these people have been in contact with me, so you also need to look out for these people.
That's smart.
Yeah, I mean, everyone needs to do their part, I think, in reducing that. And I think a lot of people are doing well by staying home and quarantining themselves. But I think a lot of people are not doing the thing where, when you have to go out, you have to make a written record about this, so that if you develop symptoms, the government doesn't have to dig through your phone records and your card transaction records to figure out where you went. But you can just hand them a piece of paper and say, hey, here are these people, contact them.
Yeah, go figure it out. Here, I did the research for you. Go figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Now leave my phone alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that's I think what should be done. But I think a lot of people are doing it really well.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that situation.
No, it's all right. I mean, after that, I'm staying home. Like I'm not going anywhere. I'm just like, what, like not traveling anywhere. I mean, it kind of sucks because I was pretty lucky to get the ticket for the Euros and for the group stage happening in Amsterdam, and I was actually supposed to go there with some colleagues from MXC. Basically, that got postponed to the same date but next year.
Wow.
Just gonna stay home.
Yeah. So obviously you're still working on MXC, I'm assuming, just the daily. That's just what I'm doing. I'm just chilling here, just hanging out in the land. We literally just put in a gym. We just made our own gym. We bought a barbell and then some weights. Yeah, so just doing that and then working on FOMO Hunt and modern markets. Yeah, man. Hey, so I want to let you wrap this up. Tell us, what are you working on right now? Anything special? What do you want to highlight?
Yeah, for sure. Like for everyone who's watching, you can follow MXCFoundation on Twitter. You can also follow me on Twitter. I really want to get some more follows on Twitter. I don't know what.
Yeah, hey man, let's get this guy some follows. Where are they at? We got great content here.
I don't want to like switch my profile photo to, I don't know, like some hot guy or hot girl.
Hey, just do what everybody else does. Just get an avatar of an animal or something, and then you're good.
Yeah, I mean, but so what's new coming out in the MXCFoundation is that we have been working with MXC, which is a hardware company in Berlin, and we have a long partnership with them. They're very good friends of us, and what we have actually made is a type of crypto miner. So it's quite different from Bitcoin miner or other miners before, because it uses LPWAN. So like I mentioned, it uses very little electricity. You don't have to have a rig. You just plug it in and it's done. And because you're providing this network, you get MXC reward, but at the same time, it's using that internet power to mine for another type of token. So one of the tokens that's going to be mined is called DHX, which is a new type of token that's coming out, also from Berlin. So they're a DAO. So MX Foundation is, we have, let's say, partnership, membership. I mean, it's a DAO, so I guess membership would be a very good term to use with them. So they recently started tweeting. They have also pretty cool like competitions going out. I know they're also very well funded because it's the whole operation is in conjunction with different IoT tokens. So you're talking MXC, Streamer, IOTA, Walton Chain, but also with parachain companies such as Polkadot. So it's starting from beginning. They're very well funded and they're going to have an IEO and it's 100% mineable. So there's no pre-mining, there's no ICO. You just mine it yourself or you can buy it on IEO. So, they're also very close friends of us. They're very talented people. So yeah, I mean, I'll also, I guess, share the Twitter link with you and you can go check them out. And yeah, I mean, that's some of the newest development, I guess, in blockchain happening in Europe. Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes out and their valuation is already quite high because, like I said, it's very well funded. If they can give us some of the money, that would be great. I mean, but...
Look, if you guys are listening, you heard them here, folks.
And I mean, I guess like if I can share some of the things that I've heard. Is that their IEO is going to be one of the big, let's say, top 5 exchanges from the very beginning. And I think it's going to be quite successful. So we are very lucky to be working with them. For people who are watching this, keep an eye out and then see, what's happening. I think it would also, do everyone a good thing by, not just for investment, but also when it comes to, understanding what real value in blockchain really comes from. Like you can literally just buy any token and just hope that it goes, I don't know, like 10x, 100x in like a month and so on. But let's be honest, right? I mean, like projects that tell you, oh, you're going to have like 10x in 1 month. Number one, that's a scam. And number two, in order for that to happen, they have to be scam. It's like, what kind of reasonable activity would give you 10x return in 1 month? Like that's just not a thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, so I think now like a lot of people are just choosing to hodl because it's very uncertain times. If you're gonna choose a project that you just wanna like keep an eye out or hodl or whatever you do, you might as well do it on a project that brings real value to the world.
Yeah, and after everything you've told me, I mean that sounds as legit as I've heard in a very long time. And obviously you're very well funded. That's a given. You guys are still around. You're still marketing. So really, hats off to you guys at MXC Foundation. That's pretty awesome that you guys are still kicking ass. And again, so what were the links or the social media links for MXC?
So for MXC Foundation, it's just at MXC Foundation.
And then for you?
For me, it's if you and the letter C and number 1, like if you see 1.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Siwon, for jumping on with us. And I hope to have you back on here. I bet it will be soon.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, when I write articles, I try to not be as controversial as possible because I do have some controversial opinions.
Hey, I do too. Don't worry.
All right, cool. So yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Most of all, thank you so much for having me. I mean, it was really chill and really fun. And I hope more people join because I think there are a lot of talented people out there on Twitter and on the industry in general. Yeah, I think it would be cool to have more people and kind of have this like honest conversation. We didn't have a script or anything, just this heart-to-heart conversation. So yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
I'll also make sure to like tag some people in crypto I know, people in VCs, exchanges, and so on. So hopefully you guys can have more people and more people can get more information to you guys. So yeah, hats off to you guys too.
Hey, thanks again, man. That's really awesome. Thanks again to Siwon, and we will see you guys in the next episode.
All right, thank you.
Peace.